Joe Rogan is a media phenomenon. In 2019, his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, was reportedly downloaded 190 million times in a month. He has over 11 million YouTube subscribers. And in 2020, Joe Rogan's podcast was signed in an exclusive deal by Spotify for $100 million. The format is simple. A vast array of guests talk with him about a vast array of subjects, sometimes for hours. And Joe Rogan and his guests can also sometimes cause controversy. In December, one guest, the virologist Dr. Robert Malone, made a number of misleading claims about vaccines during the podcast, which prompted this reaction.
Having people on there giving opinions about the vaccines that are not based in science is just not, it's counter to public health right now, and it is just not the right thing to do.
Dr. Wallace was one of 270 healthcare professionals who wrote an open letter to Spotify urging it to act on misinformation in Joe Rogan's podcast. But it was the intervention of one of rock music's original rebels that made this story go global. Neil Young threatened to pull his music from Spotify, saying they can have Rogan or Young, not both. Well, Spotify chose Rogan, and Young's music has been removed at his request. A few days later, another Canadian legend, Joni Mitchell, followed suit. And Joe Rogan has responded to the entire furore with a video on Instagram.
So my pledge to you is that I will do my best to try to balance out these more controversial viewpoints with other people's perspectives so we can maybe find a better point of view.
Spotify also responded. It released a statement saying the company is working to add a content advisory to any podcast episode that includes a discussion about COVID-19. So Rogan stays, but with a warning. And we can't understand that decision without understanding the finances behind this.
Really, the bottom line for Spotify is that if you play a Joni Mitchell or a Neil Young song, 70% of the money that generates has to go to the artists and their record labels and their publishers. When one person plays the Joe Rogan podcast, Spotify keeps all of that money, and that will very much be behind the business decision here.
Exclusive podcasts are lucrative. They draw in subscribers and advertisers. But Spotify has taken a hit with this Joe Rogan controversy. Shares slumped before recovering slightly after the company projected lower profit margins. And the head of Spotify has addressed what's happened in a call to investors.
We're trying to balance creative expression with the safety of our users.
It is a balance, but if you shift from music streaming to content creation, that comes with new responsibilities.
Spotify now find themselves in a similar position to the big social media platforms have done in recent years, where they're constantly trying to deny that they should have any responsibility because they don't want to be regulated like a publisher.
Spotify's Daniel Ek has made his position on content clear, writing, "It's important to me that we don't take on the position of being content censor. But every content company takes positions on what it will and won't publish. That's not censorship, that's taking an editorial position." Some, though, argue you need to listen to Joe Rogan to understand what's happening here. Jemima Kelly, writing in the Financial Times this week, said if Joe Rogan's critics listened to his podcast, they would know that the presenter is a genuinely open-minded host who seeks out all sorts of opinions rather than blindly following those of a particular tribe. For his part, Joe Rogan says he explores ideas that are controversial but can later become mainstream, like the Wuhan lab leak theory on COVID-19. And Batya Ungasagan from Newsweek argues he's meeting a need.
Joe Rogan is producing content for people who want to see their own skepticism reflected in what he's saying. They're not going to him for medical advice. They're going to him to hear how other people think.
They are, but on occasion they will also hear, sometimes unchecked, opinions that are not rooted in available evidence. And for some, that's a problem.
The notion that he has such a large audience being constantly confused, fed disinformation is just too much. It is harmful to our ability to, if not end, at least diminish the impacts of this pandemic as soon as possible.
Both Spotify and Joe Rogan know that he and his guests are what make the show. The podcast is different, and that difference is hugely popular. But just as Joe Rogan has the right to talk to who he wants, so musicians and scientists have the right to urge Spotify not to give a platform to COVID advice that isn't rooted in available evidence.